All right, folks, this is Sheepdog Smokey, and welcome back. And today, or this time, we're exploring how it is always do as I say, not as I do from Democrats. We all watched last year, especially here in Texas, but nationwide, people watched as Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, first of all, he's Irish, he's not Hispanic, and according to the left, that's cultural appropriation. But he can do it since he's a liberal. But he says adding SCOTUS justices is worth exploring. Now, if President Trump had even hinted that he might have been considering thinking about talking to someone about exploring that concept, yeah, that roundabout, they would have been screaming that President Trump is court packing. He's going to add three new justices just to get three new conservatives. O'Rourke says it? That's a great idea. We need to do it. Newly announced presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke, again, his name is Robert Francis O'Rourke, he is Irish, said changing the makeup of the Supreme Court is an idea we should explore. He said at a campaign stop in Iowa, he thinks it could be a good idea to have each party choose five justices, and then to let those justices choose five more justices. What if there were just five justices selected by Democrats, five justices selected by Republicans, and then those 10 pick five more justices independent of those who picked the first 10? I think that's an idea we should explore. O'Rourke then floated the idea of putting term limits on these justices. I'm going to go on record. I 90% agree on that. One simple sentence. I want it to be an age limit, not a term limit. And then if we happen to get the next Jack LaLanne, for those who don't know who that is, you're too damn young. Look him up. Great story. Doctor can say, you know what, Jack? You're in great health. Your mind's as sharp as a tack. You got 2 years. Then go home and be with your family. There's another idea of adding term limits on those justices so that there's a more regular rotation through there, he said. We're a country of 320 million people. There's got to be the talent and wisdom and the perspective, and that court should be able to reflect the diversity that we are composed of. O'Rourke is not the first candidate to weigh in on adding more justices to the court. Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg said previously on Crooked Media's Pod Save America that adding justices is one way to prevent the court from becoming a nakedly political institution. I'm sorry to tell you this, Pete, it already is. The central objective that is to prevent the Supreme Court from continuing on this trajectory to become basically ruined by a nakedly political institution, he said. This idea of adding justices is one way to do it. It may actually not be the most compelling way to do it, he continued. I mean, I'm interested in a policy where you have five appointees of Republicans and five of Democrats on a 15-member court, and where you get the other five from a consensus of the other 10, which has to be unanimous. O'Rourke on Thursday announced his presidential bid and hosted a series of question and answer sessions in the early primary state of Iowa. He is one of many people competing for Democratic nominee, and his competition includes Senators Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, Kamala Harris, Democrat California, and Elizabeth Warren, Democrat Massachusetts. Now I'm going to go on and say a couple of things here. First, Robert, Pete, you're off your rocker. Your idea is unconstitutional. The the Constitution literally says that the president shall appoint nominees to all federal courts. The only courts that he does not nominate for are state courts, and then each state determines how that happens, be it a gubernatorial nomination or election. But in order for Robert to get his way, or Pete, we would need to change the Constitution. Now, that's the one thing you don't hear Democrats talk about. They want gun control, but they don't talk about how they can't get it because the Constitution stops them. They want to change the makeup of the Supreme Court, but they won't dare float an amendment because that would expose their blatant partisanship of we want to control this court. In the 1990s, Joe Biden introduced the so-called Biden rule, wherein a president during an election year should not nominate for any vacancy until after the election, so that if that president is not reelected, the vacancy is passed to their successor. Yet in 2016, Merrick Garland was nominated for the Supreme Court by Obama during an election year when he could not run. So the exact reason for that rule that Biden created almost 20 years ago didn't apply to Barack Obama. That seat was his. And when the Senate said, no, we're going to do what Joe Biden said all those years ago, we're not even going to consider it. We're going to let the next president nominate. The left went insane. Yet in 2016, when Donald Trump was elected, they started crying about a stolen seat. Then last year, 2018, when it is not a presidential election year, the Biden rule came back up. He shouldn't nominate until the election's done. Not a presidential election, snowflake. But now we have Beto and we have Pete literally saying, I want to just let the parties nominate people. Then those 10 people nominate 5 more. Well, I'll tell you what, Robert, Pete, introduce the constitutional amendment. Get 2/3 of both congressional houses to pass it. Then get 3/4 of the states to ratify it. You never will. I'm going to switch tack a little bit here. I'm going to talk about something that I've talked about on Twitter and other places several times. That is that there is a second method for amending the Constitution. And that is an Article 5 Convention of States. It is not a constitutional convention. It is an Article 5 Convention of States. Once 2/3 of the states, that being 34, call for a convention, it is then called. Each state then selects their delegates. Those delegates travel to the convention. They then debate and, if all of them agree, pass amendments, which are then sent to the states, and 38 must ratify. Now, we have people like Robert Reich, or Reichstag as I call him, or other idiots out there screaming that that is a horrible idea. It would destroy the Constitution. It's literally following the Constitution. But we get this crap from O'Rourke saying, we just need to change it right now. Just take it out of the president's hands. Blatant violation of the Constitution. I would send Robert, and I would address the envelope to Robert Francis O'Rourke. I will not call him Beto other than mockingly. I would send him a pocket Constitution, but he'd either destroy it, send it back, or ignore it. That, or option 4, he'd say I'm harassing him by sending him the very document he wants to be elected to enforce. This crap has to stop. We need to impose term limits on Congress. We need to impose an age limit on SCOTUS, if possible. We need to put in an amendment that says if you operate in a deficit for a full fiscal year, you're out of office, election year or not, and you're ineligible for any government office ever again. And sadly, we need an amendment that says, hey, what do the words actually say? Just read them out. That's what they mean. No more of this, it's a living, breathing document. That's not what the words mean anymore. None of that. And the way we start is by rejecting people like this. Rejecting the failed punk rocker who drove drunk, tried to flee the scene of an accident. Reject the former thief who broke into homes. Reject the sick individual who wrote murder fantasies about running children down in a car. Reject idiots who stand in a city protected by a border wall and say, we don't need it because there's no crime. You're literally saying, because the wall works, we need to tear it down. He pulled an Acosta. We need logic and common sense back in government. We need people who literally, honestly will say, if nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. And then we need to convince them to serve 1, maybe 2 terms, and then come home. I've said it before. In 2004, I lost a good job. They took good care of me on severance. So I basically had 3 months I didn't have to worry about bills. Happened in mid-October. So I went, talked to a few of the candidates, or a few of the federal officials and congressmen around my area. Found out that Louis Gohmert needed help with his campaign in Tyler. So I went out to Tyler. I met Louis. I talked to him. Found out what he's about. Then I walked Tyler for 4 days, talking to people about Louis, telling him he's going to be having Q&As at this location this time. We unseated a multi-term Democrat incumbent, Max Sandlin, unheard of in East Texas. But Louis has now been there 15 years. It's got to be pushing close to when the swamp's going to get him. And as sad as that is, I want him out of there. Louis, if by some freak of nature you see this, come back to Tyler. Find a young person who believes like, pardon me, who shares your beliefs, who shares your goals, and then christen them. Stump for them. You've been there for 15 years fighting the good fight, but brother, it's time to come home. It's time to come home and let someone else continue the fight. Find someone you can endorse. And I say this to everyone in public office. The longer you stay in office, the more disconnected you become. This idiot, unfortunately, Robert, was born disconnected. Rich parents, now rich in-laws. They got him away off of the DUI charge, got him off the theft charges. They managed to, or they tried to hide the murder fantasies, and they educated him so that he can honestly stand there and honestly believe this wall is not needed because there are no criminals getting into this city. And he doesn't see the idiocy. But that's enough for me. I've been talking long enough. Definitely let me know what your thoughts are. Leave a comment. Keep it classy. Keep it civil. You can find me here on Twitter. Definitely leave a like, leave a subscribe so that you can always make sure and keep up. There will be a link in the description to email me, contact@sheepdogsmoky.com, so that you can tell me if there's something you'd like me to cover. I am a certified social studies teacher, so if there's a topic that you don't understand or you'd like to hear my take on, email me. If I use it to make a video and you want one, I will send you a pocket constitution. Best thing you can carry with you at all times, because the truth is the one thing liberals can only ever emotionally attack. And right now, yeah, they're screaming hate speech, but we're not Orwellian yet. They're not telling us we can't speak the words of the Constitution. If we don't do that now, we're going to get there. And when we do, you'll be wishing you could.